Good afternoon. I would now like to call to order our meeting today for the Allegheny County Board of Education, Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 5:02 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Llewellyn will now read closed session summaries from executive sessions held on January 11th, 2022.
The Allegheny County Board of Education met in closed session on January 11th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. at the central office. The purpose of the closed session was to consult with legal counsel, discuss a personnel matter, and to engage in administrative function. All 5 board members were present and voted affirmatively to close the meeting. The meeting was closed under the provisions of the General Provisions Article, Section 3305B1 and 7. The topics discussed were the board communication policy, OSHA's ETS, screening and vaccination policy, HR approval for retirement letters, and the audit.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrell. A second? Second by Dr. Bond. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. This time we have several proclamations, and Mr. Farrell will start with a proclamation recognizing February as African American History Month.
Yes. Whereas February 2022 has been designated African American History Month, and whereas the Board of Education of Allegheny County is honored to present this proclamation on this 8th day of February 2022 to the Allegany Chapter 7007 of the NAACP, and whereas we are committed to honoring African Americans and recognizing their contributions and accomplishments to the history and culture of the United States. And whereas the board believes it is appropriate to reflect this commitment in a proper and concrete fashion as an important month of remembrance, recognition, and education. And whereas it is desired of the Board of Education that the African Americans should be made aware of their appreciation. And whereas it is appropriate to call on all employees and the citizens of Allegheny County for their support in this effort, as well as raising awareness about issues still present in society. Whereas we do recognize that the school system is an integral part of our social and civic instruction. Therefore, the Board of Education of Allegheny County does hereby proclaim February 2022 as African American History Month, Black Health and Wellness. Furthermore, we urge our fellow citizens to join with us in actively expressing the gratitude to the African Americans during this month. In witness thereof, we have hereto set our hand and caused the seal of Allegheny County, Maryland, to be affixed this 8th day of February. Signed, Crystal Bender, President of the Board, and Jeffrey Blank, Superintendent of Schools.
You can get it from the table.
I guess Ms. Fisher,
See
President
it.
of the
It's on the
NAACP, couldn't be here, so
Yeah.
Mr. Logston is grabbing that on their behalf.
Yes, on behalf of Mrs. Fisher.
Ms. Frank will now present the proclamation for National School Counselor Week.
Sure. Allegheny County Board of Education proclamation, whereas February 7th through the 11th has been designated National School Counseling Week, School Counseling Better Together, by the American School Counselor Association, and whereas school counselors are employed in public schools to help students achieve success in school, reach their full potential, and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents, as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to warrant counseling programs meet school goals, And whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society. And whereas school counselors play a vital role in helping to ensure students learn to have respectful conversations in a school environment, therefore, we, the Board of Education of Allegheny County, endorses the observance of National School Counseling Week, February 7th through the 11th, 2022, and present this proclamation to Dr. Sarah Welsh.
Thank you so much on behalf of the school counselors. And we definitely, school counselors who are paying attention out there, we absolutely appreciate you.
And one more, Ms. Fraley will present the proclamation for recognizing February as Career and Technical Education Month.
Whereas February 2022 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain academic, technical, and employable skills necessary for true career readiness, and whereas students will participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase their engagement and achievement, and whereas providing students with career exploration opportunities earlier in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways, and whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, and information technology. And whereas preparing students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to an attainment of an industry-recognized credentials. And whereas career and technical education programs ensure that employers have access to a qualified and thriving workforce, ensuring America is a strong and competitive economy. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Education of Allegheny County, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Career and Technology Education Month. Allegheny County Board Public Schools urge all citizens to become familiar with the services and benefits offered by the career and technology education programs in this community and to support and participate in these programs to enhance their individual work skills and productivity. Signed, Crystal Bender, Board President, and Jeffrey Blank, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Career Center and all of our CTE programs in Allegheny County, we appreciate that. We also just want to thank you as a board for keeping CTE as one of your priorities. And I just want to recognize our faculty and staff that really do an outstanding job for our students and give them the skill set they need to be successful upon graduation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Up next, we have Mrs. Debbie Matheny with an update on Early Childhood Center and full-day pre-K.
Good evening. I wanted to speak with you tonight about Blueprint for Maryland's Future and pre-K expansion and the Kerwin Commission final report under Policy Area 1, Early Childhood Education Their priority is early childhood education under Priority 1, and a significant expansion, particularly of full-day programs, pre-K programs, for 3 and 4-year-old children. The Blueprint funding clearly articulates the need for families to have increased access to high-quality full-day pre-K learning experiences, and with Blueprint funding, programs are now referred to as the Maryland State Pre-Kindergarten Program. So that's how you will see it referred to moving forward. The Maryland State Department of Education and the Maryland State Board has been analyzing data related to pre-kindergarten, particularly the kindergarten readiness assessment data. Their analysis of this data has found that students who are enrolled in pre-kindergarten programs have high school performance through middle school. The findings also suggest that children who are enrolled in these programs, there's a significantly reduced number of children later qualifying for special education. So that really is the benefit of investing in early childhood education. There are different requirements and different funding sources for us to access pre-kindergarten funds. Beginning in 2007, every county in Maryland was required to have full-day kindergarten and to offer a half-day pre-kindergarten program for children who were economically disadvantaged. At that time, that was identified at 185% of the federal poverty guidelines. From 2022 until 2025, systems can access pre-kindergarten expansion grant funds. These funds allow for eligible students who are 3 and 4 years old and disadvantaged to access pre-kindergarten programs at no charge. One important thing to note is the poverty guideline for these funds has gone from 185% to 300%. So that means that a family of 4 making $79,500 and below would qualify for pre-kindergarten under these expanded funds. From 2023 to 2025, systems will also be able to access Blueprint transitional funding as well, also for children at the 300% poverty guideline. Those children will be known as Tier 1 children, and parents will be able to access pre-kindergarten programs for their children, both public and private. So that's a change. Parents will have that option as well. Beginning in 2026, we'll be doing only Blueprint, and programs at that point will have to meet Blueprint structural elements, and that will also include children whose families have income between the 300 and 600% of the poverty guidelines. It is not advancing. There we go. Okay.
If you say next, I'll do it. I think it's dead.
Okay. Can we go back, please, then? Thank you. This is the expansion that Allegheny County has done thus far. So on the left side, expansion grant funded using pre-kindergarten expansion grant funds. We have added a full-day 4-year-old program at South Penn Elementary School. We've added a full-day 4-year-old program, pre-kindergarten program at Georges Creek, and we have left a half-day program in place. We've also converted 2 half-day programs at Westernport to a full day. On the right side, you'll see with local funds, we've converted our half-day programs to full day at Flintstone, at Mount Savage, at Crest of Town, and at John Humbird. These decisions were based on enrollment trends, availability of child care programs, and socioeconomic data. We have collaborated with Head Start throughout this process and will continue to do so. If you would advance, please. So what is the Maryland State Pre-Kindergarten Program that we may participate in between FY 23 and 25? It will be a free full-day program for 3 and 4-year-old children who are from families that are below 300% of the federal poverty level, Tier 1. Beginning in 2026, it'll be a full-day program for 4-year-old children between 300 and 600% of the federal poverty line, Tier 2, and above 600%. School systems may choose to collect the family share using a sliding scale, but it is not required that we do so. These will be high-quality learning experiences for children and a look at all of the early childhood domains. If you would advance, please. So what must we do? What may we do? We must continue to provide access to a minimum of a half-day pre-K program to all families of 4-year-old children who are economically disadvantaged. This is required by COMAR. We may participate in the pre-K expansion grant program between fiscal year 23 and 25, and we may participate in the Maryland State pre-kindergarten program from FY23 moving forward with blueprint funds. Advance, please. So the program requirements between FY23 and 25, it's preschool expansion grant and blueprint funds that can be accessed. So that's a combination of COMAR requirements. They're full-day programs with income eligibility. They must be full day. Beginning in FY26, it will only be blueprint funds that are available at that time, and in order to participate, programs must meet what is called the structural elements, which we'll review in a minute. If you could advance, please. So one thing it's important to note about the blueprint funds is the mixed delivery system, and what that means is that there will be eligible public providers. So those are early learning programs that are provided by county boards of ed in our public schools. But there'll also be eligible private providers. So those are community-based programs. They're licensed in the state. They meet the requirements, and they wish to participate and apply to do so. So the law requires that families have the ability to indicate preference for public or private pre-K in which to enroll their child. So private providers will apply for the blueprint funding, and when a parent comes to register for their child for pre-K, they'll be given a list of private providers that offer pre-K. And if they are tier 1, if they're at that 360% poverty level or below, they'll be able to apply for either a private placement or a public placement using those funds. Advance, please. Okay. This chart outlines the transition process and requirements of receiving the per-pupil funding for full-day programs. The last column speaks specifically to those blueprint elements that are required. Essentially, the teacher of the classroom will need to have a bachelor's degree and a certification in early childhood education or a degree in some other field and be pursuing an alternate program of certification. IAs in these programs, teachers' assistants, will be required to have a child development associate certificate or an associate's degree. The programs will need to meet eligibility based on the Excel's quality rating scale. So private providers, their program will need to have a 3 rating. Public providers a 4 rating. 5 is fully accredited, and all programs have to have a 5-year plan to reach a 5. So in order to apply, you need to be able to meet those standards. This is the timeline that we're currently following. So any private or public program that wanted to apply for pre-K expansion grants or any private program that wanted to apply for transitional blueprint grants had to do so by January of 2022. MSDE will provide to Allegheny County Public Schools a list of all private providers who have applied and meet criteria and who are able to serve what we are calling Tier 1, 3- and 4-year-olds. They will provide that to us. This says March. We're thinking it'll be more like April. Allegheny County will determine the enrollment process and how we're going to track enrollment of all 3- and 4-year-olds who apply for pre-K slots. We will be required, as I said earlier, to share with parents when they come to enroll the list of private providers who are also eligible to take children for pre-K. And again, those Tier 1 children can access pre-K at no cost to them, public or private. So because we're waiting on the list of private providers from MSDE, that will push back our pre-K enrollment date somewhat. And so finally, I'd just like to talk with you about the plans for expansion that we have in 2023, and we're seeking your approval on these. We will continue with the current full-day pre-K-4 programs that we have in place. Those are South Penn, John Humbert, Flintstone, Cresaptown, and Mount Savage. All of those programs are eligible for blueprint funding. And these are our new expansion plans that we would like to seek approval on. First of all, Cache Valley Elementary School, it has 2 half-day sessions. We're seeking to make that 1 full-day session. And looking at trend data, Cache Valley has had declining enrollment. They're very close to Parkside, which also has a program that has lower enrollment. So any overflow or overflow enrolling for full day could also seek half-day at Parkside. At Frost Elementary School, we have 1 half-day session there. We would like to change that to 1 full day, possibly 2 full day pre-K sessions, depending on our enrollment. Frost has a lack of childcare in that district right now for the half day, and this may help alleviate some of the overcrowding at Bell. And finally, the thing that we are most excited about is the Westmar Early Learning Center. We're looking to develop an early learning center at Westmar Middle School. And for that center, the preschool classes at both Georges Creek and Westernport would come together at Westmar. That center will include 2 to 3 full-day pre-K-4 programs. It will have 2 half-day sessions of a 3-year-old program. It will have what we call a partners classroom, which is a classroom for our children who have disabilities and require intensive supports. It'll have a sensory room, a Judy Center. It'll have a family engagement room. It'll have an infant and toddler office for our birth to 5 children with disabilities, and it'll house a Head Start program. So that will help to alleviate some of the overcrowding in those elementary schools, but more importantly, it will create a space for a comprehensive early learning program and supports in that community. It will utilize the available space at Westmar Middle School. Renovations at Westmar will be made to accommodate the needs of those classrooms. And so we are seeking approval for those expansion plans for the fall of 2022. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mrs. Fraley.
Not to put you on the spot, but some of the elementary schools that do not have programs, is that due to the enrollment trends that you talked about in the beginning?
All of our programs have pre-K. So all of our schools have a pre-K program.
They all have a pre-K
They
program?
do, yes. So some of our programs are full enough to house 2 half-day sessions. We have enough of enrollment. In those schools where the enrollment was down and we were able to create a full day, which is capped at 20, we did so. But there is no school that doesn't have at least a half-a-day program for pre-K.
Any other questions for Mrs. Matheny? Do you have anything to add?
We'll come back to our new business.
Okay, we have it under new business for the actual vote, so
Okay.
there's no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I clarify just real quick, just because they're not in there? West Side and Northeast are not in this presentation, so they're not expanding nor, I mean, is that just because they're only half-day?
They
Is that
have
what's
2
the
half-day
difference?
sessions, that is
Okay.
correct. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we have Dr. Caldwell to present on an adjustment to the calendar and then also go into programs of study.
Hey, good evening. I'll begin with the amendment to the calendar request first. We would like to request a calendar amendment. We had previously asked for March to 21st to be used for staff development and teacher work time. And so we are asking to actually eliminate that request and to move that staff development and teacher work time to February the 22nd, which is already closed for parent conferences. February 22nd would then be used for the virtual parent conferences as well as time for a supervisor meeting virtually, for the most part with their teachers, and then for that teacher work time as well. Through this modification, parents would not have to plan for an additional delay for their students. Students would not lose any instructional time, and we would still be able to disseminate the information that our supervisors needed to provide to their teachers. So that is a request I believe that will be asked later on in the meeting.
Yeah, while we're here on that topic, I would ask that we make a recommendation and take a vote. If somebody would make a motion, I'll turn that over to you.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt your recommendation on the calendar amendment.
Motion by Ms. Frank, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fraley. I just wanted to clarify, March 21st will be a full day of school then, correct? Okay, I'm sorry, you may have said that and I just,
Yes, that is correct then.
okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Caldwell.
Thank you, and thank you for previously for approving it. We just realized that we didn't need it and we didn't want to lose that instructional time, so appreciate that. So the next item that I'd like to talk about is our high school programs of study. We have started the scheduling process for high school students, and I just want to share some instructional updates from our curriculum committee meeting. As part of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, the goal is on increasing CTE programs, and as Mr. Brewer mentioned, that is a board goal. and dual enrollment opportunities and advanced placement opportunities. So we are trying to be very proactive and innovative in our decision-making to increase opportunities for students and meet these blueprint goals. All of our program of study changes have been vetted through our district curriculum committee, and I'd like to recognize the stakeholders on that committee. We have stakeholders from Allegheny College of Maryland, Frostburg State University, our own school district, as well as community stakeholders. So we added an agriculture science completer called Agricultural Sciences and Operations. We've had really good enrollment in the semester elective ag courses. And so we believe that we will have success in this ag completer program, which will be 3 credits. We will decide in the next few years if we will add a work-based learning component to that ag completer, or if we'll add a dual enrollment opportunity in that program. Through this completer program, students will have one more pathway to meet graduation requirements. And they usually do that through a 2 years in the same world language or 3 or more credits in a state-approved CTE program. So we're excited about adding that. Second, we added an advanced technology CTE completer in the area of engineering design and processes. It will be a 3-credit CTE completer course, and it also provides students with another pathway to graduation. We are offering a college sociology course, which is a general education requirement for most majors. And we are also offering a dual enrollment Principles of Macroeconomics course for our students. It will only be offered online due to staffing, but we were hoping to increase the number of students that participate in a semester elective business course. And then we're excited about another innovative opportunity that we are partnering with Allegheny College of Maryland on that is modeled after our highly successful P-TECH program. We have revamped the CTE Manufacturing Engineering Technology program to allow students in this program to earn college credits and industry certifications. We anticipate that this program will have a high enrollment in it. And at this time, I've asked Mr. Joe Brewer, Supervisor of CTE Programs, to provide an overview of this program and its potential benefits for our students.
As Dr. Caldwell stated, we are really excited about this program. We think it's going to meet the needs of our community. We were, before I get started, I just want to talk about CTE in general. You know, what CTE kind of brings is, you know, actual skills, brings work experience. It demonstrates that students can actually do something. And I think what this advocate stated here is that it's not just an alternative track for non-college bound students, but it should also be a track for everybody, you know, and I think that, you know, that's what we're excited about, that we're getting more CTE programs that are going to be in the comprehensive high school, as well as these innovative programs that we're going to offer to students at the Career Center. So I would say last year, at the end of last year, ACM, they brought us together with Mr. Blank and Dr. Caldwell, and they have this industry need of people that are going to be in manufacturing technology. And when they have this great facility in the makerspace, and they want to do some type of partnership, and we kind of modeled it on the P-TECH model that we had, with students getting college credit early on in their high school career. So I have a couple slides here. This is the makerspace. I don't know if you've all have seen that or not. Just have a few pictures of the makerspace. This is the main hall area. This is one of the 3 robots that students are able to use. This is called Robbie the Robot. I think there's a Ruby, and I forget the other R robot. This is a state-of-the-art 3D printer. This is a $150,000 printer that students will have the access to use. This is a color printer that will create something. If you'd seen some of the things that it's actually created, they look extremely lifelike. There's also 2 other 3D printers there that students are available to use. This is a CMM machine that will measure things to the millionths. So companies like Northrop Grumman, BSI, they have these machines, and so students are getting trained on these machines in high school. This is the manufacturing technology area, and this is one of their CNC machines, as well as this programmable CNC machine with our instructor, Mr. Prosser. And that's just another overview of the area. Now, our seniors have already been going there this year, and they've been working on this equipment, but we are going to revamp the total program to incorporate the college courses. So what will happen is students will complete 36 college credits in automotive technology engineering. So that program was just newly approved through MHAC through ACM. They'll receive 13 NIM certifications, and they'll also be recognized with the state of Maryland with the CTE Completer certification in manufacturing engineering technology. Students will attend the Career Center their junior year, and during their skill week, they'll be bused to the Makerspace facility. And then the senior year, the same thing, they'll be bused during their skill week. This is a course sequence of what they'll be taking. So the junior year, they'll be broken down into semesters. Most of our other courses in Allegheny County are on a year-long basis, but these will be college courses. So their skill portion will be all college courses. Their junior year, they'll take 6 courses, and then their senior year, they'll take another 6 courses, so that at the end, they'll have 12 courses and 36 credits. If you just can take a second to see some of the courses they're taking, you see we have, Introduction to AutoCAD and Advanced AutoCAD. You have the Introduction to CNC Programming and Machining and Advanced. They get robotics. They get fixture and design fabrication. They're also working with the machine tool applications, the mill and lathe applications. And it's pretty exciting. When I was out to watch their students, because they're working there right now, to see what they've created already, just giving them the opportunity to work there this year has just opened up NIM certifications for them even in this year. So I think moving forward, we're gonna see these students that are super prepared. Here are the industry recognized credentials. They'll have also robotic certificates, AutoCAD. And then, of course, I said those are the NIM certifications that they'll be receiving. So after this, what do they do after high school? Well, there's a lot of options. Number one option is they can continue their degree at ACM, their AAS degree. They'll already have 36 credits of the 60 they need, so they'll only need another year at ACM, and they'll have that degree. Some students can take even more than 36 if they decide to take dual enrollment English or dual enrollment math. So they could even get more than 36 credits, but this program will provide 36 credits. There's four-year pathways as well. ACM is in the works right now with Frostburg, talking about how their program is going to transfer to FSU. And I think it can also be for those students that say, my desire is to be a mechanical engineer or a manufacturing engineer. And then you understand the hands-on part of the process. I think that if you want to do any type of engineering, that I think a student should look at this program. Because in a 4-year college, they're going to get the theoretical portion, but they might not understand how does that really work when they're in the production of that. And I think if our students understand the production and then go on to a 4-year college, whether it be Frostburg or Maryland, that they're going to be well ahead of everyone else in that program. Sorry, did I pick up the wrong one? We got 2 here, right? I had picked up the wrong one. So by completing the program at Allegheny College and our public schools, they would be a manufacturing engineer technician, technically is what they would get from ACM before they would go into the engineer. And this kind of goes through what that details. And then here are some career pathways we have for our students. But I think what is one of the other highlights is that this is the median wage for a manufacturing engineering technician in Maryland, $73,900. And more than anything, it's an area of need for our local industry. We have industry right here that needs people that are prepared and trained in this. And we have the opportunity now to partner with ACM and use this state-of-the-art facility. And I think that, that this is going to be a great opportunity for students. So we're really encouraged. Using the PTech model, we're hoping that we're going to get good enrollment in these program and see students take advantage of it. We are having an open house on February 24th at 6 o'clock at the Western Maryland Works for parents, really looking at mostly sophomore parents, trying to host them. But of course, if parents of ninth graders or anybody else would like to come, we'll have more information there. If any of you want to be there, we're more than welcome to have you there. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Mr. Brewer, thank you. I just want to emphasize, if you make the visit, we can talk about it, but if you go there and actually see what you have the opportunity to work with and do, if you have any interest whatsoever, please come to the open house on the 24th.
I agree with that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brewer? Ms. Fraley?
I have a question about the ag part, though, that Dr. Caldwell said at the beginning. It's a 3-credit program, so that's different than like this completer program that you just talked about, right? Or is it the same thing?
Well, it is going to be a completer program.
Okay.
Maryland has changed their graduation requirements. So the current freshmen, they either have to have 2 years of foreign language or they have to have a CTE program. In the past, they could do advanced tech as a graduation pathway. So now that we don't have that pathway, we have created these other pathways in the comprehensive high schools. So the ag program will be at Fort Hill, Allegheny, and Mountain Ridge. And we thought, since we had the good support and the interest, that would be another pathway to introduce, because we needed to have those pathways for our students.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Brewer. Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. Mr. McKenzie will be next, providing financial update with budget priorities.
Good evening. I just wanted to bring this back. We have before you, we've amended the priorities just slightly and wanted to bring it back before the board for their approval. So at this point, I think there is a change. Go ahead.
So there's a grammatical change in number 1.
Okay.
The last part of the sentence should read, current and future Center for Career and Technical Education programs, instead of with focus on, that should be stricken and it be just the word and.
Okay.
We had with focus on twice in the sentence. So outside of that, I would like to make a motion to approve the 2023 board budget priorities as presented in board docs and on the screen.
Second by Ms. Frank. Any other questions or discussions for Mr. McKenzie? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I also have for you this evening our first look at our draft state aid for fiscal 2023. Can't believe we're looking at fiscal 23 yet, but time does fly. So, okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about not only the draft state aid, but also some budget considerations that kind of go along with this, and kind of some of the questions that a lot of different districts are facing this time of year. Certainly with the legislative session continuing, there's always an opportunity that these numbers can change. So just want everyone to kind of be aware of that. Okay, so in front of you, these are the different state aid categories. Now the categories on the left should look very familiar to everyone, and the categories on the right are going to look a little different. Okay, the categories on the right represent some of the blueprint additions that have been either integrated this year or have been in place for a few years. But going back to the left-hand side, the foundation program represents basically a base amount per student, okay? And transportation certainly is the state provides transportation funding for us, and they'll continue to do that, along with an allotment for students with special needs. Compensatory education represents students who are eligible for free and reduced meals. English learners are students who have English as a second language and will require some additional needs and additional support. Special education are our students with special needs. Our guaranteed tax base, we're one of 8 districts who receive those funds. And that's kind of a carryover from previous years as well. As we move over to the right, the Blueprint Transition Grant Program has actually been renamed. That previously had been a supplemental grant. Okay. And we also now have a college and career readiness program, an ongoing program with concentration of poverty. That should look familiar from previous years as well. And that looks at, we have that in 4 different schools, our CEP schools. And those are the schools with the highest levels of poverty, and we provide some special programs within those locations. Mrs. Matheny shared the pre-kindergarten, what we're going to be getting there, and then lastly is the teacher salary career ladder portion of the grant. Now this is just the starting portion of that particular grant, and it deals with how the state is converting the salary scope and salary scales for teachers within the state. So similar to previous years, wealth continues to impact our aid in certain instances. Wealth is used to gauge a county's ability to fund school activities, based upon its own resources. The funding formula, the wealth formula, is intended to be an equalizer between state and local resources. It's made up 50% of personal property, 100% of the net taxable income base, and 40% of the real property base. So Allegheny actually became a little bit poorer this year. We ranked 22nd in terms of per pupil wealth. Last year we were 21st. So the majority of our educational aid comes from state sources. And so Wacomico is 23rd and Caroline is actually 24th. So as we get a little poorer, relatively speaking, in terms of wealth, we actually received additional income this year, or additional revenue. Okay. So a couple statistics. As I mentioned, enrollment is a key component still in determining state aid. So as you look at enrollment, obviously last year was a difficult year for all districts in terms of enrollments, and as a result of COVID. You can see we actually had a slight decline of 54.25 students. So our enrollment was 7,661.5 students. And you also notice that this is the first time that I can recall that our free and reduced meals actually dropped below 50%. We're at 49.81% for students who qualify for free and reduced meals. That the farms percentage is actually decreased by 3.81%. At the state level, though, that decrease was more like 7%. Some big districts actually had a much larger drop as well. So Montgomery actually dropped 16.3%. So and one of the things I think you can contribute that to is because everyone is still receiving a free meal, there's not as big of an incentive for students to turn in their forms. But I do think our food nutrition staff did a really good job of minimizing our drop and going after, trying to get those forms in from those students. Okay, so what you can see here, it's very small. I apologize for that, but what the grand total looks like, just to kind of share that. So state aid is going to be almost $94.1 million this year, and that's a 5.75% increase from previous years. And you can see the different components. One of the things this year, there's $3.4 million attributable to pre-K. So that is a large increase from where we've been in the past couple of years. So, that makes up a large portion of that increase. But certainly, we've done pretty well, at least preliminarily, from a state aid standpoint. Again, increasing 5.75%. That being said, there's still quite a bit of discussion and movement related to Blueprint. So I think I just ask everyone to be cautiously optimistic about our aid and where it stands. This is a certain point in time, but so far it's looks pretty good. Then the next slide just shows graphically the breakdown, and certainly you can see basically that a little over half of our funding comes from the foundation program. As we talked about, that's funding for attributable to all students. In terms of budget considerations, certainly, we have to continue to consider the impact of COVID and continuing to reduce our learning gaps. We still have pending negotiations with our bargaining units. As I mentioned earlier, the legislative session is in full swing. So PZAM and MABE are continuing to monitor several bills that could have an impact on us. And then Blueprint was to be implemented this year. Those milestones may be delayed as the Accountability and Implementation Board, or the AIB, it continues to evolve, and it's kind of been behind in its implementation. So there's a good chance that some of those milestones will be pushed down the road, but we don't know to what extent yet. Does anyone have any questions about the state aid?
So I have a couple of questions. On the, I don't know which slide it was. The slide that has the state aid sources that right before the graph.
Okay.
The foundation program you said is for all students. Is that the same concept as restricted versus unrestricted? Is these funds that come in that are in these newer categories, are they restricted to be used for that? I mean, that's probably an obvious question, but.
Yes and no. One of the things, in fact, I just had a CFO call today, and that particular topic come up because CFOs tend to think of things in unrestricted and restricted terms. And the guidance that we received was technically it's unrestricted, but you really need to account for it as if it is restricted. So most of these items will receive 6 equal payments for, okay? But there are reporting requirements around those. So I'm thinking some of them will probably be considered restricted for our purposes of reporting.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. The monies that were given, the timeline that Mr. McKenzie is referring to may be pushed, but it's our responsibility as a county to meet those requirements by that certain date. So if we have that bucket of money and would do something different with that and don't meet those timelines, then we would be under this.
We wouldn't be in
consequences of that.
compliance.
So to your point, it's kind of restricted because you have to plan that out. And to Mr. McKenzie's point, we don't know the timeline yet to when that final date is that everything has to be implemented.
Right. In the foundation program is based upon a certain per pupil amount for all students.
Okay. So I think you have to turn that off so he can
Oh.
hear me. No, we don't have to? Okay. So then, with that being said, in the future, and I know this is a draft, right? But in the future, will you have the prior year state revenue not broken out by category? Just to see the difference of the categories when the state aid comes in, because that'll be useful to know what we can possibly spend money on. And this is just the state aid. This doesn't include the local portion, correct?
That is correct. And another topic of discussion, just so you are aware of as well, on our CFO call today was maintenance of effort and some of the changing rules around what maintenance of effort is going to be. So this year, so we do not know exactly what that's going to look like yet. And certainly we can show a comparative statement. Now, one of the things that will be different is some categories have been rolled into other categories as a result of blueprints. So it might not be necessarily apples to apples, but we can show you, for instance, the net taxable income portion of last year's aid, I believe, has been rolled up into foundation. So, we can map where those things went.
And so what I'm trying to just make clear too, though, is that just because it appears that we're going to be getting 6%, if you round, 6% more in state aid does not necessarily mean that our overall budget, when it happens, is going to be higher because of, like what you said, maintenance of effort. I've heard, I've heard some of the conversations of some of the bigger counties who are very concerned that although one number is going up, another number is going way down, and the net is going to be a negative number to them, to some counties. So it's just something I wanted to clarify, and the concern being, with our fund balance that we have and how that's going to work together with other key expenses that we have trending forward. We need to be able to see that to know what the impact is, and again, just to clarify that this increase is not necessarily an overall increase at the end of the game.
Right, and certainly as we continue our path forward with our CARES funding as well, that's another wrinkle that I think we'll have to take into account during the budget cycle as well. So.
Are there any other questions for Mr. McKenzie? Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business, we have several policies. I will turn it over to Mr. Llewellyn.
The first thing you have from Policy Committee is a second reading to repeal the student harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, intimidation, and violence policy, JBA. We're not repealing it because we think bullying is a good idea. We're asking you to repeal it because we have a new model policy, which you're also voting on in second reading, and for which you have regulations for review under new business today. So we're asking you to repeal on second reading policy JBA.
Is there a motion to approve second reading, or I'm sorry, repealing JBA?
Motion to repeal.
Motion by Mr. Farrell, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Fraley. All those in favor? Passes passes unanimously. Thank you.
Also for second reading, you have before you policy GCD, which is hiring and promotions. The policy committee reviewed this. As you'll recall, about 10 years ago, the board combined two policy manuals into one. In the process, the hiring and promotions policy fell off. So revisiting that, it was determined we did need to have a hiring and promotion policy. You have that before you for second reading, and we'll have the regulation under new business.
Motion to approve second reading of policy GCD.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Frank. Any questions for Mr. Llewellyn? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Next, you have the second reading of the new bullying, harassment, or intimidation policy, which will be the new JBA. And this policy is based off the model policy required by the Maryland State Department of Education.
Motion to approve the second reading of policy JBA, the new JBA.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley. Is there a second? Is there a second by Dr. Bond? Any questions for Mr. Llewellyn or comments? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, hearing of constituents. I believe we have one person signed up to speak, Nicholas Price. Is he present? Okay. We will move into new business. And is there a, go ahead, Mr. Blank.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend to vote to approve the new Early Childhood Center and full-day pre-K additions as presented by Mrs. Matheny.
Ms. Fraley?
Motion to approve the recommendation by Ms. Matheny and the superintendent of schools regarding new early childhood center and the full-day pre-K expansion.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley, second by Mr. Farrell. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank
I'd like to take 1 minute to thank Mrs. Matheny, Dr. Caldwell, and staff. There were many people involved in the new Early Childhood Center, so we're excited and looking forward to offering that for our students here in Allegheny County.
We have a guideline recommendation to be presented by Mrs. Tracy Leonard. Yeah, she saw me.
Good evening. With the winter sports postseason approaching, we're requesting a couple updates regarding the quarantine process and protocols for our student athletes. If a person tests positive for COVID, we're not asking any changes with those protocols. The student athletes may return to play on day 11 as long as they're symptom-free. If a fully vaccinated person or a person who is positive for COVID in the past 90 days who is a close contact of a positive person within 6 feet for the cumulative of 15 minutes, they will not need to quarantine as long as they're symptom-free, and we're asking that those students involved in athletics may continue to play. And then an unvaccinated person who is a close contact of a positive person, again within 6 feet for the cumulative time of 15 minutes, must quarantine the 5 days from the last exposure and may return to school on the 6th day as long as they're symptom-free the entire length of their quarantine. And those students involved in athletics, we're asking if they could take a PCR test on day 5, and those athletes may return to play when they receive a negative test result. The proof of the negative test result must be sent into the school, and if a student does not take the PCR test, they're able to come back on day 11, similar to previously, and as long as they're symptom-free. We're requesting this mainly because of the postseason that's coming up and the quarantine process of possibly eliminating a full team if they're close contacts.
Would this take effect immediately?
I would say yes. if possible.
Are there any other questions for Mrs. Leonard? Okay, is there a motion to approve the recommendation regarding the vaccinated and unvaccinated athletes? Motion by Mr. Farrell, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fraley. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Leonard.
Thank you. Can I just make one note, please? All spectators at the basketball finals, which are going to be held at the University of Maryland Xfinity Center on March 10th through March 12th, will need to show proof of vaccination to enter the facilities. This is a University of Maryland protocol, but we just wanted to get that out there as soon as possible in the event of one of our teams being in the finals on March 10th through the 12th.
Yeah, just to follow up. So if I'm a fan and I want to go to the game, if I'm not vaccinated, they won't permit me to get into the facility.
That
And
is
it's-
correct.
And it's their rule that we would have to follow, according to Andy Warner.
Yes, they are continuing to use the University of Maryland as the host site for the finals, and that is a University of Maryland policy. All fans and spectators must be vaccinated.
And obviously, this would not pertain to players or those students involved in the activity. They will have some other guidelines for those students who are not vaccinated to be able to participate.
That's correct. All the student athletes and coaches that are under our guidance here in the local school system will have separate guidance, but spectators and fans will have to be vaccinated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Noel.
Just to clarify for vaccination status, is a fully vaccinated person someone who has both shots and a booster shot, or is it just the first two initial shots?
According, we're saying fully vaccinated, having their two shots. Of course, if you have gotten your booster as well, that also counts, or if you've been positive in the last 90 days.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Leonard. Okay, this time we'll have Mr. McKenzie back again with a budget amendment recommendation.
Another item for your consideration this evening is a budget amendment. You'll recall at our meeting of January 18th, the board agreed to approve the bid for Baltimore Contractors, Inc. For renovation work at Greenway Avenue Stadium. What we're requesting is a budget amendment of $3.5 million. As we looked at the bid, it was almost 4.9 million. There's $1.5 million approximately that the Greenway Avenue Stadium Committee has procured, leaving the balance, and that's what we are requesting this evening. What this means is our current budget of $118,440,696 would be increased by $3.5 million, and if approved, that would then have to go to the Board of Commissioners for their further approval, even though it's not impacting their participation within our budget. Because we are increasing our budget, they have to approve it. Does anyone have any questions?
Ms. Fraley.
Motion to approve the requested budget amendment of $3.5 million to defray the cost of the Greenway Avenue project.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrell. Any other questions or comments for Mr. McKenzie? Mrs. Fraley.
Just to note that the 3.5 is coming from the fund balance currently, as far as the budget amendment is concerned. And then the overall cost of $5 million or 4.9 of the $5 million, the Greenway Avenue Stadium Committee, I know, has received official approval for half of that 1.5, and the other half is in the process. If something were to happen as far as them getting that funding, would we need to come back and have another discussion?
Unless there were another funding source in the interim that would fill that gap, I think that would be the case.
Any other questions for Mr. McKenzie? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, for your consideration this evening, we were contacted by the IAC and with the request that we consider reprioritizing our CIP projects. And you all had previously approved those. And you know, the idea is funding basically stops when you get to the point where if there was a certain project that they had not approved. So by reprioritizing our projects, it will allow us to potentially receive additional state funds for construction projects. So that's what we've asked as part of this reprioritization.
Motion to approve the requested reprioritization of the FY23 capital improvement program.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley, second by Mrs. Frank. Any questions for Mr. McKenzie? Ms. Fraley?
Just to be certain, the 7 that are here on this list, were they the same 7 that were on our list previously? I didn't have a chance to look.
That's my understanding, yes.
They're
Just in a different order.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Llewellyn, I'll turn it over to Mr. Llewellyn for more policies.
You have before you policy BH. This is the school board communication policy with changes. The changes are outlined in yellow. There are additions outlined in yellow, and any language to be removed is struck through. So you have this for first reading. Do you have any questions that we can ask?
Ms. Fraley?
Motion to approve the school board communication policy BH for first reading.
Motion by Ms. Fraley. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Bond. Any questions or comments? Ms. Frank?
I have a question about letter C, and for those of you, and I apologize because you're not seeing what I'm looking at, but the intent of this policy was to address social media communication in addition to other communication between board members and the public, board members and school system employees, and so on. So under under letter C, it currently says, when communicating to the public, board members should adhere to the following standard. To avoid potential violations of the Open Meetings Act, board members should not deliberate board business on social media. I am recommending that we add or other media platforms. I think we focus too much on social media and ignore the press and comments and commentary that are made in those two areas. So I would like to add or other media platforms to the end of letter C.
So that's been addressed on board docs. It has that language. I think friendly amendment is that
Okay.
what you're voting on is what's on board docs.
Okay,
So that was updated.
gotcha.
Any other questions or concerns?
The only other question or comment that I'd like to make is that in the future, I'd like to have a discussion from a policy perspective on whether it's a regulation or what, of the consequences of a violation of this policy. It's not for this vote, but for in the future of what the processes and procedures should be if there's a violation of this policy.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor to pass first read of file BH? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next, you have before you a new regulation for review. This is to tag along with policy GCD, which you just passed on second reading. This is the regulation to go along with it. It basically outlines standards for the Human Resources Department to follow as they develop procedures for hiring and promotion. I think I can speak for Human Resources. These aren't new ideas, but these are at least guideposts for the hiring process. And so, Policy Committee recommends this regulation. It is a review, so if you don't vote, then it passes.
Any questions or concerns? Thank you.
Next, you have the regulation for the new bullying, harassment, or intimidation policy. There's a lot to this. This is all based on the MSDE model policy that we're required to have, and so Policy Committee worked through this. This regulation meets all of the MSDE requirements. Again, it's a regulation, so you're just reviewing. So unless you send it back for more work, it passes. The only note I'll make is that we are right up against the deadline for having this implemented, so we're hoping that it passes the review.
I had a question about, and I realize this is a very lengthy regulation, as it should be. But on the second page, under letter C, procedures for providing notice of an act of bullying, harassment, or intimidation, this indicates a parent or a guardian of the targeted student will be notified within 3 business days after the act is reported, and the parent or guardian of an alleged perpetrator has to be notified within 5 business days. We don't clarify how these people are being notified. Do they get a copy of the reporting form? Do we make a phone call? Who makes those phone calls then? I think if we leave it loose like this, there is an opportunity for no follow-through to happen. So I would like to see specifics under there, that if it is a phone call, that we say it's a phone call within 3 business days, or it is a copy of the reporting form within 3 business days. We don't indicate how this will happen, and I just, given the problems everybody has with bullying, I don't want this to be the reason people don't know there's any follow-through.
The obstacles that we would run into is if we don't have options there. Some may not have a phone, some may not answer the phone, some may not. So I think ideally the best communication would be a phone call so you can talk to the parent. But if that doesn't happen, then to your point, maybe we have to send a documentation in a mail, or maybe even a certified letter. But that's something we didn't discuss with the policy, but that's something we could add. But I'd rather it be a tier. You do this, and if you can't do that, then we do this, because we want the parents either to come in and sit and talk with us, or at least be on the phone.
And I agree with that 100%, but I think unless we spell it out, there could be a chance where somebody tries to make a phone call, no interchange has happened, and then people believe that there's been no follow-through. And I think it's critical that we not allow the opportunity for this to slip through, and that nobody know what's going on.
My advice is to allow Policy Committee to take a look at that, but to not strike down this on review, because you have to have, and by the way, this is the language from MSDE, that you're reading there. But, we can take a look at that in Policy Committee, but I think we have until the 15th to have this implemented. So my advice is to allow it to go, but I think I can safely say we can put it back on the agenda for Policy Committee to revisit it.
That's fine.
Okay, so this is a regulation. Unless there's any other concerns, we can move on.
That's right.
Ms. Fraley?
Just for clarity, like you said, that has to be in place by the 15th. Does that mean, because I know this is a little bit different in the way that we currently process bullying, would it be effective, like tomorrow, quote unquote?
So your policy's already been passed on second reading, effective immediately. Regulation reviewed. Unless you guys reject it outright, it's effective immediately.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, at this time, can I have a motion to meet in executive session on March 8th, 2022 as necessary? Motion by Ms. Frank, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Fraley. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Student member of the board update, Ms. Noel.
Good evening, everyone. So I just have some updates for the Allegheny County Association of Student Councils. This January, we had our first General Assembly since COVID started, which is pretty awesome. It was virtual, but I thought it was really great start, and it was a great way to connect, especially to other students on the executive board who go to different schools. It just was a great way to get to know them and kind of get into the motion of getting together and starting to host these events. So we had a pretty decent participation among some schools. We had a lot of presentations by our executive board on some college and career readiness, high school readiness for our middle school participants. We did some leadership style tests and just stuff like that. I thought it was really insightful, and we're actually having another General Assembly at the end of this month. We hope that we can increase some participation with that, but we're looking to in the future possibly have one in person, COVID allowing obviously, but yeah, I'm just really happy with that. At the end of this month, also, there's a state executive board meeting that I would like to attend either virtually or in person. It's like 3 hours away, so I don't know if I'm going to be there in person, but I definitely would like to be there for that. So that'll be interesting. And then right now, the state student member of the board is currently hosting their elections, and actually, Allison Schultz from Fort Hill High School was in the top 5 candidates for the state student member of the board. She was selected. It was very competitive. A large number of students applied, and only 5 were taken to the next level. So this Saturday, during legislative session, which I'll be also attending virtually, we have some delegates that will be able to vote for our state student member of the board who will serve on the Maryland Executive Board of Education, which is really awesome. We're very proud of Allison, and we really hope that she does her best, and it would be awesome to have her as the state student member of the board. To my knowledge, I don't think anyone from Western Maryland has ever been a state student member of the board, so that alone is awesome. And the top 5 candidates from the state are all women, which is really awesome. So really proud of all the candidates, but definitely proud of Allison, and I look forward to supporting her. So yeah, that's about all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Noel. Are there any board member updates or committee updates? Dr. Bond?
I'd just like to say first, it's really awesome to hear the stuff Dr. Caldwell presented about the expansion of our ag program into all 3 high schools going forward. This makerspace program development also just seems awesome. I'm going to try my best to be there for the open house. So just want to say congratulations and thanks.
Ms. Frank?
I just wanted to say, as everybody has heard tonight and as Dr. Bond referenced, we are on the cusp of having the largest investment ever in education in any state in history, with the blueprint for Maryland's future. And you've heard tonight the plans with pre-K, rolling that out. You've seen all of the exciting things happening with CTE. I know from my college perspective, we're looking ahead at partnerships, and I just wanted to thank everybody who's worked so hard on this. We have not only the COVID challenge, but we've got the challenge of coming up with plans for this historic funding. So, as Mr. McKenzie said, we got to patiently wait and we'll see, because changes are going to happen, I'm sure. But, for all intents and purposes, this is going to be something monumental, and it's really exciting to see new things, in Allegheny County. We're a small county, but to have as many blue ribbon schools as we do, to have innovative programs like the Chinese Immersion Program, and now all these CTE completer partnerships, that's just phenomenal, and it happens because of the work of everybody. in this office and in the schools. So I just wanted to congratulate everybody for all of that.
Mr. Farrell?
I know we have a whole lot of exceptional students that graduate from Allegheny County schools and go on to do great things, and I don't know about all of them, and I don't hear about all of them because they're off in other states, or it just doesn't come to me. But I do want to recognize one who, Danny King, who is being recognized at WVU this evening. He's a kicker. He was a student athlete at Fort Hill. Any students over there, I think, that have above a 3.0 are being recognized at the basketball game tonight. And Danny's one of those. I think his GPA is 3.6, which is, to me, phenomenal. To go over there and be playing athletics and to still maintain a 3.6, I think is just very, very commendable. And I know we have more students that do that. I know we have a lot of them. But I think that's reflective on our community, on our teachers, and our schools, that we're putting students out like that, and we need to hear more about those kind of students. So I commend Danny and his family, and I commend the teachers for doing such a good job. Thank you.
Mrs. Fraley?
I'd just like to note on the legislative session side, there's a lot of bills that are going into session that can have an extreme impact on Allegheny County, not necessarily just within education, but other areas as well. So please reach out and look at the Chamber of Commerce. I know, for one, has a bill report that they put out for people to watch for actions that could impact us, as well as the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, which we're a member of, also puts out information on their website that's very useful, especially when it comes to the blueprint. There is some documentation there that tried to summarize that massive bill, but it does provide information, and I've heard in session a lot of legislators are utilizing that to try to understand what the impact is. And also, I testified as a parent and a member of Allegheny County on a bill regarding reportable offenses, and those reportable offenses coming to the school system so that they're aware of if there's something that occurs outside of the school buildings. And there was some legislation that's being put forth that may eliminate or at least limit the amount of reportable offenses that are told to the school system. That, in my opinion, my own personal opinion, is something that needs to be looked at. And again, it's something that, as the community looks forward to what your government's doing for you, make sure that you reach out and look at what's happening in our legislature, because there are impacts that oftentimes we don't know until it's already voted in. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had one update. I wanted to make everyone aware that I've been working with the principals of the high schools, the Career Center, and the 3 high schools. We'll be coming out with information in the near future in reference to certificate ceremony and graduations. So just bear with us a little bit as we're trying to, there's a lot of pieces to that, so we're trying to, we'll get that information out as soon as we can here, hopefully in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blank. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Dr. Bond, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Fraley. All in favor? Thank you. Have a good evening.